Well, Jeff, in the book you've released in 2011, The Toyota Under Fire, you've talked how the Toyota way helped Toyota overcome their recall crisis. How do you see the Toyota way and Lean itself helping companies overcome crisis, financial, image crisis? How do you see it helping it?
Okay, so again, I would distinguish between the Toyota way, the philosophy, the principles, the way of thinking, and then what we often think about as Lean, which are tools like value stream mapping and trying to reduce lead time and make your processes more efficient. That part of it may not make that much difference in a crisis. But what really matters is, as I mentioned, the idea of respect for people, but built into Kaizen, the idea of Kaizen, along with Genchi Genbutsu, which is going and seeing for yourself, built into that is, number one, the assumption that you can only improve if you have a honest, realistic view of what your problems are. So that's a starting point. What are the real problems? So for example, in the case of the recall crisis, which was the center of the Toyota Under Fire book, Toyota had to be very honest and ask, what was the reason for this crisis? And the claims were being made that Toyota vehicles would suddenly accelerate. You'd be driving along and everything's fine and you're whistling and having a happy day, and suddenly your Toyota just leaps forward and starts driving uncontrollably and kills you and ruins your day. And that's not true at all. That was complete science fiction. There's no reality to that. In fact, the only accident that really got publicity was a family in San Diego, and the problem was that the dealer had put the wrong floor mat in the vehicle. It didn't fit, it was too big, it was a rubber all-weather mat, and it was guaranteed to jam the accelerator pedal because it was the wrong floor mat. And the solution to the problem was put the right floor mat in. So Toyota had to study that and see, was there in fact some cause of sudden acceleration as they were claiming, the computer system or the electronic system, and there wasn't any. But that wasn't just, we're going to make excuses. That was saying, that's the facts as we know them. Those are the engineering facts. There were other problems like a sticky pedal that was a true problem later. But the technical problems weren't really the issue. The problem that Toyota discovered was that when they had when they got this problem exposed, somebody actually did die, or a whole family, and then the media was attacking them, they were struggling to respond quickly. And the reason they were struggling to respond quickly is because they were making all the decisions in Japan where they didn't really understand how serious the problems were in the United States. And they were kind of taking their time and doing root cause analysis, and they didn't feel the sense of urgency that the salespeople in America working for Toyota felt. So there was a communication issue, and also they weren't giving enough decision-making authority to the people in America. So they did a very extensive reflection, and they found that the basic problem was failure to really listen to the customer and respond quickly to the problem. And then they basically turned the company upside down to improve. They had something like 30 different significant countermeasures, one of which was to eventually appoint a CEO of North America, an American who has the authority. But first they appointed a chief quality officer who directly reported to Mr. Toyota. Yeah. And he had a hotline, a cell phone, where if he thought there was a need to react quickly and to recall vehicles, he could make it happen within hours. And Akio Toyota appointed chief quality officers in every region of the world who had that power. So that was a short-term fix. They also changed the product development process to put in 6 weeks devoted only to studying potential quality problems. They created a training program for their field technicians. So the field technicians would better understand when the customer has a complaint, better diagnose the technical problem, and then have a very quick way of communicating to engineers so they could change designs. So there are many different changes, much more than I think other companies would have made. And most of those changes probably took 5 or 6 years to really have an impact. So by the time the changes occurred, Toyota was no longer in the papers. Nobody was thinking about recalls anymore. And even today, if you go to a Toyota plant, you'll see a quality display where you go through the quality display and it has a video of that accident in San Diego. And it emphasizes how Toyota was at fault for not being quicker to respond. And then they teach you about the importance of quality. So they're still communicating and developing their employees to remember that event and use it as motivation to make quality a top priority. So I don't think a lot of companies would do that. I think they would try to get through the public relations crisis, and as soon as they're through it and the lawsuits, they would then kind of forget that it happened, and they'd want to forget it happened. But in the Toyota Way philosophy, you always want to bring problems to the surface and use the problems as a way to learn, to grow, to improve yourself. In fact, when I talked to Akio Toyoda a couple of years later, when all these crises were gone, and he said, "Do you realize that this is my 4th year as a president, and every year, actually it was the 5th year, and for 4 years he had a crisis every year. It was the recession, then the recall crisis, then there was a crisis of an earthquake and tsunami in Japan and a nuclear reactor meltdown, and they had a shortage of parts. Then the 4th year there was a crisis in Thailand, which was the worst flooding Thailand had ever experienced, and they lost access to parts and they had to stop making some vehicles." And he said, "Now it's year 5 and I have no crisis. This is going to be my most challenging year as president." Because, what he's saying was that a crisis motivates people. But when you don't have a crisis, it's more challenging as a leader to motivate people. And basically saying, this is the year that's really going to test my leadership.
Yeah, just like problems, in a generic way, motivates people, right? So
exactly. Well, problems can scare people. They can make people freeze. There's that fight or flight response when you feel attacked. So you can respond very negatively to problems and be afraid you'll get in trouble. But the whole basis of the Toyota Way, the whole basis of the Toyota production system is honestly surfacing problems. So that requires a attitude by leadership that every problem is, they say, like a golden nugget or a diamond, and you praise employees when they raise problems. The employees are very scared, nervous, and you congratulate them, maybe even give them a reward for coming up with a problem, because that's the way you improve. So it is a different philosophy. That's another reason why respect for people is so important, because without trust, people will hide problems.